Hey friends, I'm Jess, and we are gathered with some gals today to talk a little bit about body image and shame and freedom. Will you guys introduce yourselves real quick?
Yes, I'm Kayla Garcia.
I'm Melissa.
I'm Shay.
And I'm Taylor.
Okay, thanks for being here. You guys, I'm excited to talk, but I do have to say our first question is a little heavy and maybe not such a happy one to talk about, but we're going to get to some life-giving things. So my first question is, when did you first maybe receive the message or begin to believe falsely that your body is not good?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just so thankful that we're all gathered here because I know we all have different stories and different walks of life, but we're also in different seasons, probably even with this message. This morning, I was just thinking I'm releasing the pressure for this to feel buttoned up because I think we will be walking this road of healing toward freedom all of our life because that's just what living in this world means. So looking back, I wouldn't say over past seasons of my life that I was oh, I know in the moment I was riddled with body shame, but I can look back with what I know now and be oh man, I didn't know that's what that was at that time. But now looking at it, I can say, oh yeah, for sure. Two examples of that is I was telling Taylor and Kayla this the other day, but I remember, I want to say it was either late middle school or early high school. Regardless, I was super young, and I don't know if you guys ever remember the Special K diet that came out.
Yes.
I remember. Yeah.
Triggered.
I know, trigger warning. But I remember I was young because I could not drive to retrieve the said Special K diet for myself, but I remember asking for that. So
real.
that's a story / red flag number one. Number two is I remember being on spring break in high school with a friend, and in the moment I remember thinking oh my gosh, she's so much smaller than me. She's so much smaller than me, and just being eating up with that. Yeah. And looking back at pictures now, we were literally the same size. And so just the warp eyes that you have toward yourself, toward others. And so those are kind of two personal experiences that stick with me as I think through.
I have to echo that. I remember being in middle school, probably 7th grade. And I don't know if anybody's triggered by the words back to school shopping, but I was.
For more ways than one am I triggered about back to school shopping.
I remember being in the store dressing room and my mom had picked up all these outfits for me. And I remember pulling on a pair of pants and it would not go over my thighs. And I just remember her looking at me and being all right, sis, you have a couple more weeks before the start of the semester to get it in gear. We're going to put you on a routine and it's going to be great. And I just remember being wow, this really hurts. I'm going to have to go up a size. I'm going to have to go up 2 sizes and somehow join this diet program to be able to look great to start the semester off. And I'm 13.
It's so sad.
You know?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
That was tough.
Yeah.
That was really tough.
That's really tough.
Wow.
Well, my first time, I think, goes back to when I was 7 years old on the playground. And on both of my feet, 2 toes are stuck together. Okay. So saying this out loud, it seems so silly today. But as a 7-year-old and someone else, another child, another kid, seeing your toes for the first time and being oh my goodness, what's wrong with your toes? Look at her toes. And so I was just gawked at. People were how do they get that way? Why can't you just get them separated? And, I'm 7. I have no idea why,
Yeah.
But it just, it affected me so profoundly.
Yeah.
I did not go barefooted for probably more than 12 more years.
Oh.
I was so embarrassed about my feet, had them covered, didn't want to talk to my parents about it or anything because I was ashamed of being ashamed, I guess. And I even remember family members, I remember my mom saying, you should be happy about your toes. You can swim faster because of your duck feet. And I'm that really did not make me feel much better, right? As a child having duck feet.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really even swim faster than anybody else. But it was a long time before I got over that.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, I always say there wasn't this big defining moment. I always say it was generational shame because I grew up, my grandma, my mom, my sister, there were always parts of their body that they just said not good. And I remember the Special K diet, the Atkins diet, going through all the things. And as I began to age and I started having attributes of them, I was like, does this mean I'm not good? Does this mean they're looking at me saying she's not good? I always say more is caught than taught. And I was always told, oh, you're so beautiful or whatever else. But I was like, well, now I look like you and you say you are not. And that was always hard because I was like, instead of being in awe of God and the genetics he created of me looking like all the women in my family, it's like, is this not good because they said it's not good?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys have brought up so many important things. So I want to talk about a little bit of that because I think that for many of us, there is these two different camps. Either someone said there is something about your body that is not good, or you heard other people say it, which ultimately even was the Special K situation. Right. You know, they were saying about their own bodies, this is not good. I want to talk a little bit about that, but honestly, you brought up something that I think would be interesting to camp on for a second, which is this idea that we have shame about our shame. And the shame about our shame and even the confusion about our shame keeps us from bringing it into the light.
Yeah.
So did any of you have a time in your life, early life, or even adult life, where maybe you exposed your shame to someone and it further cemented a lie you believed about your body?
Such a good question.
This is a really good question.
I remember one of the first times I communicated to my friends that I felt different, that I felt other in my body. And I remember kind of having that underlined and them saying something along the lines of like, if you really want to fix it, you know, you could do X, Y, and Z.
You'd be like, that is not what I was saying.
And I don't even think I was fishing for compliments. I wasn't going to my friends and saying like, I feel different because my body is different than yours. I wasn't even looking for them to say like, no, it's not. But looking back, I'm like, man, I feel so much tenderness for that middle school me who just needed someone to say like, no, actually you're beautiful and you're good and we're all different and that's good. So yeah, I'm just curious if you have any memories.
I didn't until something you just said, and that would be someone saying, well, it would be a lot worse if you had this. So it kind of like is like, you have so much to be grateful for, so why are you focused on that? And even that just doesn't help, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Or even, interestingly, so I am noticing now 3 different camps. Sometimes people saying negative things about their own body impacted us. Sometimes people saying something negative about our body impacted us. But also another one would be somebody saying something negative about somebody else's body. So they don't even think they're saying something negative about you or about themselves, but about someone else. And then you realize, okay, there's like a line of what's acceptable.
Right.
But I'm not sure where it is or where it falls.
Yeah.
You know?
True.
Yeah.
Any other memories like that where maybe you spoke some of the shame or the fear and had it confirmed?
So I was a dance major in college, and I remember we all had very honest conversations because there were some women who struggled with eating disorders and things like that. And so our teacher sat us down and was like, okay, how's everybody feeling? And that was my first time being open and honest about how I don't feel like my body fits the standard of the ballerinas that are next to me. And my teacher looked at me and she was like, if you have something wrong with your body, then fix it. If you want to make it in this world, get to work. And I was like, okay, I'm never going to share about this again. And it makes you clamp up and like, okay, then it's suddenly the reason that I look the way that I look isn't because God made me this way. It's because of my lack of discipline or because of my mistakes or my inability to do hard things. And so you just start to spiral in all these other thought processes of things that I was unable to do.
And you know someone else in that room could so relate with what you said, one of those other dancers, and then that response shut her down too. She's like, well, I'm not going to share that.
100%. Yeah, I totally resonate with that, Taylor. I remember I have a chronic illness that primarily affects my reproductive system. And I miraculously got pregnant a few years ago and ended up having a miscarriage. And it was so devastating to me. But I will never forget walking into the doctor's office after spending hours in the emergency room having a miscarriage and walking into my gynecologist's office and them telling me, well, if you would have been smaller, this wouldn't have happened. And that just reaffirmed everything in that moment that I was shaming myself for. And I just remember sitting in that office and like not really being present and like just very much in my head thinking like, God, if you've called me good, can I really hold on to this truth when I feel and I'm carrying so much shame and believing the lie that this is my fault and that there's something I could have done to prevent this. And I just remember like that being so devastating and being a untruth, a lie that I held on to for so long.
Yeah.
And I think so often we forget like how powerful our words are, how powerful, and like even the most well-intended words can really hurt and destroy and like cause a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And I think what you brought up, Jess, I'm like, you don't even recognize it sometimes in the moment where we're like saying something and we mean well, but then it comes across so poorly, and we never know what the other person is already believing about themselves on the other side of it. And, you know, our own self-talk that we're navigating and dealing with, that we have to be so intentional about like creating space and honoring where that person might be. You know, I love in your book where you talk about like shifting the conversation from like, hey girl, you look skinny, you look thin today, like you look amazing, to like, hey, you look strong, you look powerful, I love seeing you walk in your purpose, like go girl. I love the shift in the conversation, and that really challenged me because I was like, man, how many places in my life have I still been commenting on like, hey, it looks like you lost weight, or hey girl, like you look great in that outfit, it really cinches your waist or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, how unconsciously harmful those things are. Like, why are we still commenting on our bodies, girl?
Right. Yeah.
Like, why are we still having that conversation?
So good. Kayla, we're definitely going to come back to that because you just dropped a lot of beautiful truth bombs. And one thing I love about words is that God has given us this wild authority and this capacity in that words can wound us. Words can just burn a house down, and then they can have this wildly redemptive nature. So even you just speaking and preaching and testifying, I think is going to serve a lot of people. So I'm so sorry for how those words harmed you. And I'm so thankful for how God is using your words right now to bind up hearts.